Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What do you do when no one else is watching? What do you do that makes you happy for no reason at all? What are you obsessed with? I'm Leslie Arfin, and I'm a writer, but I'm also a dancer, a painter, a vapor, a dollhouse enthusiast, and basically just an overall hobbyist. My podcast, Filling the Void, is all about what other people are fanatically into. We talk about hobbies, even if you don't have one.
Listen to Filling the Void on Tuesdays on the Arios Network and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Hi, Kathy here. Quick spoiler warning. Dave accidentally spoiled Avengers Endgame in the spoiler street section of this podcast, and then I accidentally spoiled Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, I believe, also in the spoiler section of this podcast. So you've been warned if you've not seen either of those huge movies.
Hi, it's Dave here. This is my wife, Kathy.
Hello.
This is the Cinemile, the podcast where we walk home from the movies. And today we're going to see the James Bond spy film from the James Bond spy franchise. No Time to Die.
The movie that literally everyone's been waiting for. It's so
There's
funny.
been no time to release it.
I actually kind of hadn't really noticed that it was finally happening because it's been pushed out so many times.
It was almost like they trolled us too many times.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the boy who cried No Time to Die is about to be released. I was like, yeah, right.
Yeah, it's just so long ago that it was supposed to be out. And even then, obviously, it had been a few years since I think it's been so long since a Bond that we've been doing this podcast for, over 5 years, and we've never done a Bond on this podcast.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
so,
it's a lot. Like, we would have covered one on this if one had come out.
So we saw Spectre in like 2016, maybe? 2015, 16?
Anyway, neither of us were particularly fans of Spectre.
I'll go a little bit further.
Yeah.
I hated that movie. I thought it was dreadful. I thought it was dog shit.
Wow, it's a strong word.
It was terrible. We wanted to walk out of the cinema.
Was that the one where Javier Bardem and Judi Dench were like fighting in the woods?
Skyfall, which I quite enjoyed.
Right.
You're right. We saw that in East London. And you sat there. You said, "I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave." You said, "This is so boring," and I was like, "I totally agree, but I'm not leaving. Got to see this to the bitter end because you don't walk out of a movie halfway through unless it's Baywatch."
I think it was actually kind of around the time as well when Daniel Craig was like, "I hate being James Bond."
We didn't want to be there, but only half as much as Daniel Craig didn't want to be on that screen.
But
it was emanating from him.
But was that the movie where the intro was him running across all the roofs? Because that was cool.
Yes, it
was
an
really cool.
awesome intro in the Day of the Dead in
that was amazing.
Mexico. Oh, there's some incredible stuff in that movie because it was still Sam Mendes, great director. All right, so look. Before we go see this movie, we will just give the top line because we've never spoken to anyone on this podcast about Bond. I don't think so. As you've said, we've never done a Bond movie on the Cinemile. Let's just talk about our top level sort of feelings towards Bond and then the Daniel Craig franchise, as this is going to be the last one, right?
And as most people in the world, we've seen a lot of Bond movies. You just can't help it, right? As being someone who watches English language movies. I've seen probably seen most of them and remember none of them. That's kind of my Bond vibe. Who's your favourite Bond?
Don't have a favourite.
Mine is...
I don't really care about Bonds.
My favourite.
So apologies here. I know people this is considered people love this. They love it. They take it to heart. They grew up with Bond. It's multi-generational. My dad loved Bond. So I'm like, I really if you don't like people having different opinions to you, or if you're just you want to come here for just a Bond loving, I can't give that to you.
But Dave, I'm not asking you for a Bond loving.
I'm talking to the audience.
Bond is a series.
I know you're not asking me for a Bond loving.
I'm just saying it's a series of movies that has spanned a lot of people's lifetimes. And
all right, IMDb.
No, I'm just saying and there's loads of iterations of it, and there's loads of different types of Bond movies. So not.
And I've never connected with any of them. That's what I'm telling you.
Okay, but I'm just saying, no one's going to be here that loves all of them. They're wildly different in quality.
But people love James Bond and the Bond movies, particularly the British.
Spectacle.
And we've got a huge British fan base here.
But isn't a lot of it, what I like about Bond is, while I don't tend to like love most movies, but like I remember when Pierce Brosnan was Bond, that was so much fun. So he's my favourite Bond.
Yeah, GoldenEye's my favourite one.
We were so
personally
excited that there was an Irish Bond, right?
That's not why. But
no, but we were though as a country. Like it was really fun, and he was great as Bond, so he's my favourite. But like what I've always loved about Bond movies, even the movies I didn't enjoy, is it's like that kind of it's really rare. You've got movies that are this kind of a spectacle. Like you've got Bond, you've got Harry Potter, you've got Lord of the Rings. Like I'm thinking in terms of anticipation.
Yeah. No, it's a big movie with big buzz behind it.
Star Wars before they started making them every year. Like when Star Wars first came back. Like remember that level of anticipation.
Yeah.
Like, and do you know why No Time to Die kept getting pushed out and why they wanted it in the cinema?
Why?
It's because of all their brand deals. So they couldn't put it out to a streaming service because, like, up front, what they have agreed with, like, Aston Martin, Rolex, whatever their sponsors are.
Oh, that they get
on the big screen. So it would have turned into like a Scarlett Johansson Disney type of situation.
Right.
Because
that's interesting.
Yeah, so that's why it's a cinematic event, and I really love that they kept it as a cinematic event.
And it's filled with
it's product
premium
placement.
brands.
Yeah, and they want to be on the big screen, and like fair enough. And like that's why I'm interested in like all the elements of Bond, while individually I don't tend to like the movies much. You're more down on the movies than I am.
Well, I'm not. Here's the thing. I'm not down on the movies. They're all well-made movies. They're relatively entertaining. For me, the James Bond is a series it's a series that the appeal of James Bond is all wrapped up in nostalgia, and it's all wrapped up with the things that are iconic about Bond that I objectively recognise as very good. The music is incredible.
Yeah, the music's
theme
amazing.
Music, I could do. Anyone could do it right now. Dung, 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 dung. There's so many like amazing little moments. About the around Bond.
Interesting fun fact about this James Bond. Like Billie Eilish, I believe, has already like won a Grammy, but like a year ago.
Yeah, that feels like a long time ago. I actually forgot she was even doing the song. But that's another thing. The James Bond opening theme song is very iconic. You get the puns that kind of Roger Moore kind of.
Roger Moore's my least favourite Bond. He's a creep.
He's creepy, yeah. But the you've also got like iconic villains. So there's a lot of, and there are some great memorable
and
ones.
The car
and henchmen and
Q's watches,
the gadgets. So there's a lot of. I would say for me, I recognise the appeal of like all the minutiae like that goes into a James Bond film that makes Bond. But anytime I'm watching a Bond film, and I mean literally any time, I could be watching any Bond film. They're all the bloody same. They're a copy and paste formula. I could not tell you the different plots. I can't, none of the plots or ever. And somebody's listening to this and saying, Dave, it's not about the plots. It's about gadgets and fun. And I'm like, yeah, but this movie's 2 hours and 45 minutes long. I'm like, and I think the Daniel Craig franchise or Daniel Craig movies of Bond, the last 5, are particularly egregious to me compared to the previous ones, which kind of just knew what they were. This is the Bond formula we're going to do, it's one and done, it's a bit of fun. These movies focused on the wrong element of Bond, which was never the appeal, which is the story and the plot, okay? So
I don't agree with you.
Well, Daniel, what have we got? Well, you can't even remember Spectre. I can tell you that it was a culmination of 4 movies worth of convoluted plots that ended, spoilers for Spectre, with Christoph Waltz trapping Daniel Craig in a maze of memories that I couldn't remember because the previous 3 films and the plot were so unforgettable. Do you remember this? He literally had a chamber filled with pictures of all the villains from the previous movies. Mads Mikkelsen with some red string pointing towards whoever the Quantum of Solace victim was. And I am the architect of your pain.
I agree with you.
I've been building up to this for 10 years. I was just like, I don't
Dave, we're not here to review Spectre. Bonds should be standalone. That was a fundamental issue. That you're right, and I remember now.
I'm not reviewing Spectre. I'm giving you the context to why I'm not excited for 2 hours and 45 minutes of this movie.
Well, that's not why I didn't like the Daniel Craig movies, though. I remember now not liking that. I just always thought they were like too serious and lacked the fun.
Yeah, that too. They you like your favourite. The thing that'll be written on your grave will be, she didn't take herself too seriously. And this is what your criticism of movies and the MCU movies often, they took itself too seriously. Yeah, and I didn't like that.
Daniel Craig's Bond takes himself too seriously.
These movies do take themselves too seriously.
However, I'm pumped for this. Could you stop dragging me down?
Sorry, okay.
Because I actually
I'm excited about this. I want to see it on the big screen. I'm here for it. I've seen some really good reviews that I'm going to trust. And I'm going in with anticipation.
I don't trust the reviews. The Peter Bradshaw at The Guardian gave Spectre 5 stars, and everyone's entitled to their opinion.
I mean reviews by my friends.
Oh, from your friends.
I don't actually really trust critic reviews.
Spectre got great reviews, and I remember thinking, like, what level am I on to everybody else? I don't get it.
And we watched Spectre before we had kids, so we were not in a fugue of exhaustion.
Yeah.
My favourite Bond experience we ever had, and then we have to go. This is wild. I'm sorry if this is your first time listening to the podcast. We never talk this long.
Very rambly. Very ranty. I'm sorry.
We went years and years ago. Do you remember? It was like Christmas time, and we rented a camper van in Tasmania, and we decided to watch loads of old Bond movies.
Oh yeah, we watched Live and Let Die.
Which is the Roger Moore one.
That's Roger Moore and Christopher Walken as the villain, and there's a blimp. He's called Zorro or something.
Incredible. That was like peak Bond ridiculousness. And
Roger Moore is 57 or something, and he's like, the Bond girl is like 22.
And Grace Jones was in it, and it had the Eiffel Tower and the San Francisco Bridge. Yeah. It had 2 iconic landmarks that were used ridiculously. And
there was a whole plot about horse racing.
That's the most I've ever enjoyed a Bond movie, watching that one.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if Daniel Craig will go silly like that for his last. He's nearly as old.
It doesn't look very silly. Yeah, anyway, look, we actually should.
I haven't even seen the trailer. I think I might have seen the trailer, but it was 2 years ago, so I can't remember it.
Okay.
All right, let's go.
I want this to be good as much as you do.
I want the intro to die.
Commit 3 hours to this.
I want to stop talking.
All right, let's go. All right,
okay.
Bye. See you in a bit.
James, fate draws us back together. Now your enemy's my enemy.
His name is Safin.
And what does he want?
Revenge. Me.
When her secret finds its way out, it'll be the death of you.
You can imagine why I've come back to play.
There's a young lady in Santiago I want you to meet.
You're late.
When you're ready. Salute.
I met your new 00. She's a disarming young woman.
I get why you shot him. Yeah, well, everyone tries at least once.
Okay, we are out. We have now seen No Time to Die, and I will be the first to say that when I'm wrong, I say I'm wrong. All right, I had an absolutely brilliant time at that movie. I thought
he was just quoting Dirty Dancing, by the way. Did you know that's what you were quoting?
Of course.
Right, okay.
Of course I knew what I was quoting.
Nobody puts Bond in the corner.
Everybody on the listeners were like, yeah, Dave, Dirty Dancing. And you're like, guys, it's a film reference.
And
have you met our audience? No, I was wrong. I was way wrong. I had no reason to be...
You couldn't have been more wrong.
I'm happy to be wrong, because that was a brilliant 2 hours and 45 minutes. I really enjoyed it. I think that's one of my best Bond movie experiences ever. I thought Daniel Craig was...
He's finally enjoying
excellent.
himself.
By the way, we won't spoil. There's
We're
no
not
spoil.
spoiling.
If it's your first time here, no spoilers yet. There'll be spoilers later in our spoiler street section. But yeah, I'm quite happy. I'm really happy. I had a grin on my face. A lot of that. It looked beautiful. It was
so
exciting.
Beautiful.
There was actually emotional stakes. Daniel Craig seemed like he wanted to be there, which was good.
It was also very standalone, like some references to previous movies, but not
I'm going to get to that in spoilers.
Not like a House of Horrors, like photo from every movie thing.
Yeah. So yeah, what about you?
I'm delighted. It's the most, aside from GoldenEye in the cinema, I would say this is the most I've ever enjoyed. And aside from Roger Moore and the Eiffel Tower, actually, this is the most I've ever truly enjoyed a Bond movie. It's like Daniel Craig finally realised, you know what, it's actually fun to run around with the toy. It's alright, it's fun to run around with the toy gun and make millions and millions of dollars pretending to be James Bond. That's fun, Daniel Craig, right?
Yeah.
This is what most people want to do with their lives. I think I really felt it was a new director. It was punchy and it was fun, and I say that for a movie that was 2 hours and 45 minutes long. It was punchy. It was so beautiful. I'd say it's the most beautiful looking, when they did the beautiful shots, like the scenery, like it was stunning, and it just you could just feel that was shot on Destination, and like just made me want to be in Europe. And there's some like really iconic shots referencing old movies, which I loved. And it was properly funny, and I have to say, like, really, really emotional for me. Like, I felt everything at the end of this movie.
Didn't
and
expect
we'll get to it in Spoiler
any
Streets,
of that.
but
Yeah.
like, honestly, that was brilliant, and I'm so glad, and I know they had to for commercial reasons, but I'm so glad they kept it for the big screen and they did it right. And
it's good in the cinema.
It's so good. Like, this would not have felt the same on a small screen. And if you're listening to this and you haven't seen it yet, and you're on the fence,
if you're comfortable going to the cinema, go see No Time to Die. I'm sure you've already seen it.
If you're not, when you do get to watch it on the biggest screen you can at home.
I think
do not watch it on an iPad.
You said it right earlier. This is an event movie.
Yeah.
And it's a spectacle, and it's entertaining, which is honestly all I ever want when I go to the cinema.
And I could follow it, like, unlike the last few movies.
Yeah, this is the thing, right? This is what was good about this.
I think was this Cary Fukunaga?
It had Cary Fukunaga, I never get his name right. The guy that brought us True Detective season 1, all the episodes,
anyway,
Cary Joji Fukunaga, yeah.
Anyway, I think it's a shame that it didn't bring him in movies ago, because I think part of the taking itself too seriously thing now must have been a Sam Mendes problem as well as a Daniel Craig problem, because this felt notably different.
Don't forget, famously, now we've got Neil Purvis. I've got the IMDb. Neil Purvis and Robert Wade did the screenplay, but Phoebe Waller-Bridge,
of course, she was brought in to punch up the script.
To punch it up, right? And let's get to it in a minute. But I felt like under the surface here, there's a lot of very deliberate winks to Bond's history of misogyny, let's say. And
I mean, they have talked about like Cary Fukunaga. I heard him like talking recently about, like, if you look back at the old movies that Sean Connery was in, like, Sean Connery
the word
was a rapist. Yeah. And like, you're looking at, that's the history you're dealing with, and you're treading a very fine line with this character, because, you know, this character, when he came out in the 60s, I believe, in movies, he was already like a fuddy-duddy even then, who like didn't like the Beatles, right?
Yeah.
So like,
and the source material was written long before that by Ian Fleming, a man.
So he can't really square, like, if he was alive today, right, and existed, let's be honest with ourselves, he's extremely conservative, violent, presumably Brexiteer, probably mates with Boris Johnson. Like, is he someone we'd probably want to hang out with or spend any time with? No. I think this movie has done a very good effort of bringing him up a bit to be more modern, but without being like painfully introspective like he was in other movies, and then cast brilliantly all around him. And it's interesting because there's been so much debate about like who'd be the next Bond, right? And I actually do find it infuriating when people are like, oh, there should be a female Bond. It's like, no, there should just be other movies that have new female characters. Like, Bond is a man. Like, I don't understand people saying that Bond should be a woman, because it's like, no, just make a new character. I'm so sick of people just redoing things over and over again. Anyway, I think they've addressed that issue very well in this movie.
Agreed.
By bringing in more female characters. That's all I'll say about it. I'm totally sold.
And also, let's talk more about the female characters in Spoiler Street and their relationships with Bond, because that feels very different as well.
Now, this fundamental problem in this movie, however, you do still have an old man hooking up with young women. Yeah. And they have not been able to get past that. A couple of movies ago, didn't they bring in like Isabella Rossellini or something as a Bond girl?
There's I don't remember.
And now they've reverted on that. They're like, no, let's go back to young women.
The fact that there is an archetype that we're all familiar with, a phrase, that Bond girl. Yeah. Right? That's kind of troubling in itself. And also, just like, it's got his name in the title.
Yeah, you're right. Though, is it his name or is it the movie franchise name?
I'm pretty sure, like, this is such bait for the other side of this argument, which is, you know, the outrage, conservative outrage, you know, the woke gone mad PC. And I honestly thought this movie handled that incredibly well and sensitively, to the point where it probably won't upset those people either.
This movie is like, this is,
but those people get upset by
hundreds of millions of pounds are on the back of this movie, and it's an interesting thing to observe, like, what is a very corporate entity, right? What are they called? Broccoli Productions or whatever. They're like the last Hollywood magnates left who own a franchise.
That's right, yeah. Like the studio don't own the rights to James Bond, right? They kind of MGM licensed them from the Broccoli.
They're like the last dynasty left of who would own something like this. And they have total control and say over it. They have so many commercial commitments. And in fairness to them, they were the ones who were like, we need to shake it up a bit when they cast Daniel Craig. Like, you know the way people talk about, like, what if they ever cast a black James Bond?
Yeah.
Do you not remember when Daniel Craig was cast and there was a petition because he was blonde?
Bond, not blonde. Yeah.
So, like, it's like, this is how the viewers reacted to... And I was thinking about that watching this movie. I was like, his hair's not even blonde.
Anyway,
it's like sandy brown. So this is how conservative this audience is and how weirdly obsessive they are about him. So, like, yeah, to your point, I think they managed to balance all of those commercial and like corporate interests extremely well in this movie. I'm really impressed by it, to be honest.
Because there was outrage when Lashana Lynch was cast, and that I remember the headline, the tabloids being like, tipped to be the next female Bond and all this kind of stuff, and it was just like
outrage.
This movie addressed that really well, and we'll get to that in spoilers.
Also, I totally forgot Voldemort was in these movies.
Yeah, he sure is.
And I was like, "Where's Judi Dench?" Dave had to break it to me. Couldn't remember where Judi Dench was.
Sorry, this is my point about those previous 4 films. They're like. Casino Royale's got some memorable stuff.
All I remember is
Skyfall. I quite enjoyed a lot of that movie, but like I can't like the fact and the beginning of this movie, without spoiling anything. Again, I was thrust back into it like Vespa. If you fucking mention Vespa one more time, stop trying to make Vespa happen.
But
you like Daniel Craig. Apparently, James Bond fell in love with Vespa 10 years ago in a movie I don't remember, and I've got to every fucking
Dave,
movie
watch your language.
Have him moan about Vespa.
Yeah, but you want to know the funniest thing?
But also, they didn't do any work in that movie to establish this love for all time that will stay with him.
How could you say that? Because we don't remember the movie.
It's like Eva Green was there, I guess.
But you want to hear the funniest part about the Vespa is when they showed her grave in this movie. That's not a spoiler because like she died 5 movies ago. It's all they talk about. They showed her date of birth and her date of death, and I was really quickly trying to do the maths. Mid-20s.
Like 26 or something.
It's just like absurd. I mean, like, why does this old man, like what's Daniel Craig now, date these young 20-something women? And I'm still annoyed they didn't address that in this movie. And I'd say Phoebe Waller-Bridge might have tried to, but probably came in too late when it had already been cast.
Probably. Anyway, before we get into Spoiler Street, I'll just say, to tie that one off, I thought this movie did a good job at making me believe that Bond was really interested in a woman.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It also did a really good job of finally convincing me that Daniel Craig's a human man.
Yeah.
Because before this, I just never rated him. And then we watched Knives Out, and I was like, oh my God, he's brilliant in Knives Out.
He's great.
What has he been doing in the Bond movies?
Where have you been all these years while we were filming these Bond movies?
He's just been going, I hate being Bond. Don't make me be Bond.
I think he finally came out of his shell because he was like, this is my last one. Great, I'm out.
And
Let's have some fun.
He probably thought as well, you know, at the time, it will be released and then I'll move on from it. It's like, oh no, James, you have to do press in 5 years' time for this movie. Because it's going to be delayed so many times.
Him James.
Yeah.
All right. I think we both recommend this highly. It's a very good movie. Go see it.
Do you think it also helps that we've seen him in Knives Out, and therefore in my head he's now kind of a comedic character? So ergo, just like by a little glance he might make, I'm like, oh, he's humorous now. I know he's funny. Whereas before I just thought there was nothing behind the eyes.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Tell me. Right, so with that said, let's move on to spoiler. We're not by a street, we're by a river. Spoiler.
Is this the longest episode we've ever done?
Spoiler swamp.
Apologies for how long this is, but it's a Bond movie.
We'll try and wrap. I think if the movie wants 2 hours and 45 minutes, you can grant us 45 minutes to chat about it. However, before we go to spoiler river swamp, it's very swampy here. We're gonna just do a quick shout out to some of our lovely new patrons over at our Patreon. So thank you to Liz Lieberman, to James Harrington, to Adam Willis, to Maeve, just Maeve, and to Ashley Ryman. Thanks all of you for joining our Patreon at patreon.com/TheCinemile and supporting the show for £2 or £3 a month. And they, like all our other patrons over at the Cinemile High Club get access to all of our movie and TV episodes,
including upcoming weekly Succession episodes.
Yes, so weekly Succession episodes. We just recorded High Fidelity. You get to pick the retro movie you want us to watch. If you're interested, head on over there, and we really appreciate it. And thank you to all our new patrons.
Now, spoilers.
Spoilers for No Time to Die.
And if you haven't
have
seen
been
it,
warned.
Turn off, because you actually don't want to be spoiled for this movie. There's a genuinely
There's some
good
surprises.
story.
Yeah, some actual surprises.
Real surprises in this. So you've been totally warned now, right? Turn off.
Right, you've been warned. Right.
Okay, how do we want to... Do we want to go through, like... I think we should talk about the female characters. Then we should talk about Rami Malek.
Yeah, sure.
And then we should talk about some of the big set pieces.
Sure.
And now I've forgotten my list. And then we talk about the ending, obviously.
Great.
By list, I mean...
glad you invited everyone to the pre-production meeting.
By list, I mean me rattling things off the top of my head. So we have to talk about the other 007. Love her.
So Lashana Lynch.
So cool that they did this.
Who I watched just last week in Captain Marvel, which I rewatched.
Dave's rewatching all the Marvel
Monica
movies.
Rambeau.
FYI.
So I thought she was awesome, kick-ass. I really loved how they introduced her in this movie.
Me too.
They introduced her in what feels like all the clever stuff will naturally now get associated to Phoebe Waller-Bridge, despite the fact that surely the other two guys would have inputted a lot of this stuff.
I think Phoebe Waller-Bridge said she just came in and punched up the dialogue.
Oh, fine, okay.
I'm pretty sure it was effectively written when she was brought on board.
The whole way that Lashana Lynch's 007 got introduced was as a typical James Bond girl.
Yeah.
Right, a Bond girl. She was like, hop on. There was a lot of
She's
flirting.
She's like, wanna ride?
Yeah, and when basically she goes straight to the bedroom, and it just all felt very familiar. It felt like a textbook James Bond scene. And then they nicely flip it on her head with her literally like pulling off a disguise. Almost like she's pretending to be this flimsy Bond girl. And she's actually 007.
I love that she got his number.
An awesome reveal.
I love that she got his number, and this is just so brilliantly addresses the whole male-female Bond to me. It's like James Bond is a person. He does not need to be cast as like Jasmina Bond. Do you know what I mean?
It's a code name. It's so
Give
obvious.
her the other number.
Exactly,
it's so clever.
Yeah.
She's brilliant. I loved her. I thought she's a really good action star, actually.
Yeah.
And I thought the scenes between her and James Bond, where you would have a natural rivalry, right, with someone who in that situation. However, they didn't overplay it, either of them. It's like relatively professional and subtle, where you're like, you're pissed off, but you're kind of reining it in a bit. And then I just really enjoyed the scenes with those two, and then Voldemort as their boss, who was like kind of pitting them against each other as well.
Let's come back to him, because he's the villain of this movie.
We're talking about 007. Did you not read the production notes?
I want to come back to that.
And I just loved her whole place in the ending, and I just thought her character was really good. I actually think we'll see her, whoever the next Bond is. I feel like she'll probably still be in the franchise, unless they do go back and it's like a young Bond and it's a whole new thing, which that would be what they do.
Or they just carry on with her and she's 007 and the movie is called the movies are never called James Bond.
Dave, did you hear anything I said about the commercial interest of this franchise?
I'm just saying that's an option.
They had a rebellion when they cast a sandy brown haired white man.
I know. I don't think MGM and the Broccoli's will have the wherewithal to do it.
I think the most they'll do is cast someone younger and reboot it a bit.
Perhaps.
I mean, they can't really cast someone older.
Sounds so boring. Anyway, okay, let's also talk about the main female protagonist, Madeleine.
I kind of got the impression she might have been in the last movie, but I don't remember her.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say the same thing. I have a feeling she was Inspector, but I have blocked that from my memory, nor was it able to penetrate my memory. That's the movie failed to make a mark on my brain anywhere.
But what I really
surely she was the forgettable love interest in that one.
She must have been, because it carried on. But I really liked how we met him happy with her. And their honeymoon sequence, where they were, was in Italy, was so beautiful.
And straight into On Her Majesty's Secret Service references, which they referenced throughout this whole movie.
Yeah, and even I got that, and I barely remember that movie because they're iconic. You know, those crane shots of that winding road.
I'm sure that's the
it's 100% in that movie,
right?
And also just that classic trope that I've forgotten about, where why can't Bond just drive on the appropriate side of the road? He just drives veering across the road, back and forth. It's so dangerous on bends.
No, but what I liked about that, you're forgetting in that moment, she says, can you go a bit faster or something? And he says, we've got all the time in the world. He's not going fast. That's the point. He's literally slowed down. He's not driving dangerously. Because we saw the same scene on a similar road in GoldenEye where he's doing, like, with Famke Janssen, and he's, like, out there fucking driving sports cars around corners.
Are you saying it's not dangerous to veer from left to right of a winding road on a cliff?
No, that's Road Safety Authority approved. But I think
I really enjoyed their honeymoon thing, the fact that they were like visually, and it must be a thing they do in this place, but she was like, they were like burning the bits of paper, letting them float. It just was all beautiful.
Beautifully shot, lovely, and I felt like
the whole time I was thinking, but what about Vespa?
They'd good How do you feel about Vespa? Let's have a thing about that. Anyway, this is the cold open, all turns into a betrayal. Then there's a really awesome series of action scenes.
I love,
and then we're off. And then
funny, like, can we just say, like, when we like talking about the spectacle of Bond, from the opening intro with that, what I think is a brilliant Billie Eilish song, gorgeous credits,
great fun.
I was just like, I'm here, I'm in the mood. And then that opening sequence, and then the action that came from it when, you know, the Vespa's grave blew up, which I really enjoyed, because they're like, please stop talking about Vespa. And then that whole thing, and then I was just like, I was just so into it. Like, it's not like the start of Spectre where you had that amazing like ceiling jumping, roof jumping thing, and then it got really boring. This like opened with all that and then just kept with it, and I think it's remarkable actually, the pace they kept to that.
And then the Billie Eilish song finishes, and the title, the words come on screen, 5 years later. And at this moment, you just mentioned it, I've just watched all of Phase 3 Marvel, and I thought, hang on, this is Endgame. And not only that, then the movie, all started to like fall into place for me. He's Tony Stark. He has a very traumatic event in the cold open, which has forced him out of the business into retirement. Has a daughter, except in this case doesn't realise it, who risks everything and kills himself at the end to save the world.
Are you spoiling Endgame?
Spoilers for Endgame, I guess. I'll put that a warning at the top. It's been 2 years, 3 years.
Also,
however,
he's not Tony Stark.
Kathy, I thought when I came out of the movie, and I hadn't said this to you yet, when I came out, I was like, this is an amazing comparison. I'm gonna absolutely land this one on the podcast, guys. They won't believe it.
It doesn't land at all.
I googled it, and obviously there's a whole article about how No Time to Die has ripped off Endgame, and I'm let
me just get back on this.
Somebody got there first.
You think this ripped it off in that
old
rich man has young girlfriend,
I don't think
father's a child he didn't know about.
I didn't write the headline ripped off. I said it reminded me of Endgame throughout. His whole arc was the same as Tony Stark.
And I'm saying it's an absolute like pace by numbers visual of a tortured man. He's old, he's got a younger girlfriend, he knocked her up without knowing it, he now has to go and spend years in the wild being a hero, and then he'll finally come back and rescue his family.
Yeah, these are archetypes.
Such a trope.
Yeah, I find tropes, but I'm saying it's like it had 5 years later and a daughter, and then end of the world stakes.
Off topic.
Anyway,
right.
Come on.
The other female character we want to talk about is the woman from Knives Out,
Ana de Armas. Yeah,
I was really disappointed by how they used her in this movie.
They marketed her heavily, actually, and then she's kind of only in a scene.
But also, when he met her, she's like, oh my god, I'm such a ditz. Like, I'm the stupidest woman you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
I'm brain dead, right? That's her introduction. And then,
but then
when
she was
they're
a badass
in the party,
fighter.
She's like incredible on like the comms. She spots the baddie. She does all this work. It's like, what happened there? Did Phoebe Waller-Bridge, did they forget to get her to review the first scene and only review the second scene? Because it was wild.
I didn't really get her character either. I think she was like supposed to be. She's introduced as a rookie, like first time in the job, quite excitable, but also I guess very confident and accomplished.
It was bizarre.
So I'm just like,
it was like I actually don't know why.
And then she was gone. So, but what I did like is that he didn't have sex with her for no reason.
There was none of that in this movie.
There's no unnecessary flirting or sex scenes. It's just
he goes, oh Shirley, do you want me to take my clothes off or something? And she's like, no.
Yeah.
I think it's just like, I actually feel like Daniel Craig would be like, I'm not doing that, like, that's gross.
But also it would have distracted from what they were trying to build with the Doctor.
Yeah, wouldn't it make sense?
An actual love relationship.
Okay.
And the daughter thing did surprise me. honestly. And it actually introduced some interesting stakes.
It did. Can we talk about the fact that also, like, post-COVID, this movie is a bit traumatic because it's all about a virus and quarantine.
Yeah.
And the labs.
I'm glad it didn't come out last year.
Yeah, it was like a bit on the nose. Okay, Felix, poor Felix.
Yeah, Jeffrey Wright. I forgot he was in these movies.
I'm like, it's the guy from Westworld, it's Bernard!
Yeah. He's been in it since Casino Royale.
Did not know that. But I think that's because I hadn't seen Westworld, so I had nothing to pin him to.
But anyway,
before.
his death scene got me good as well. I was quite like, there's fair emotional stakes in this.
Because even though I didn't specifically remember that actor playing Felix, obviously we know the character of Felix, and I think they kind of established quite well that they're actually quite connected. And like, I love that scene when the guy, the Book of Mormon guy, I really enjoyed that whole sequence in the forest. Like, all the set pieces were brilliant actually, but when James Bond did his one-liner
villain,
and he goes, come on brother, help me or something, and James Bond goes, I had a brother, he was called Felix.
Yeah.
And just smashed
and
the car.
I love this idea that he was a Bond superfan as well.
Oh, it was so
good. So, and I like the idea of like him, Bond, being off books, working for the CIA on the side. Honestly, I found the plot very concise and easy to follow.
I don't think he was working.
The stakes were easy to follow.
Yeah, it was really easy
to
follow.
There was a MacGuffin which I understood.
But
and
I don't think
dangerous.
that Bond was all fuck working for the CIA. I actually think Bond was just like working for himself because he wanted to save the world. Like,
he was trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And the role of 007 was taken.
Yeah. And he's right. Like, to be honest, it's actually a really terrifying virus that can be programmed to a DNA sequence, and then like.
So you could take out families, ethnicities.
The fact that when they said like, guy was killed and then he was in a casket and then his relatives kissed him and then they all died from it, like, that's actually that's wild.
So,
and then when the guy later, the evil Russian guy, is saying to the new 007, I could eradicate your entire race, and then she just goes, time to die, and kicks him over. I love that.
So can we now talk about that, since we're on the subject, the fact that M is the villain of this movie, not Rami Malek, right? He is like, M created that horrible virus which you have just described.
This is where I got confused because I thought M was Judi Dench, and I was like,
no, M is, as you said, Voldemort. And not only literally, he's literally the most dangerous man on the planet.
He's wild.
He funded this thing, which and then halfway through the movie, when it's explained to him over the phone from Q about the power of this thing, it could wipe out entire ethnicities, it could be programmed to do anything. It's a surprise to him. This man who is in this position of power.
But isn't it like that thing of like, often you might...
blinded.
Yeah, but you might often, like, and I think this happens with anything that is now a major weapon, including something like Facebook. Use the Facebook analogy. I don't think when Mark Zuckerberg was 18 and in his basement was he like, someday I'm going to have a platform where I abuse the insecurities of young women to sell them diet pills. And that was not Mark Zuckerberg's intent. That is what he's doing.
I know, and it's the same in the Manhattan Project and the atom bomb, you know, those Nazi scientists.
Exactly.
A lot of them may be feasibly are just so laser focused on a goal and, you know, not asking if they should. But however, how fucking stupid is he? And like, I'm sorry, this is the other thing. It's like, fine, I kind of bought that. What you're describing. He just wanted an efficient assassination tool.
Like, to think, it's just tailored to a bad guy's DNA. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? You wipe out his entire family just by. But like. But the movie, fine if you do that, but and then like there is a nice scene where Ralph Fiennes kind of addresses it with Bond down by the river, and you know, this is what I was trying to do. I've made a terrible mistake.
But if you notice, as he got older, he just looks like Voldemort now. Like,
I know his nose is slightly falling off.
He wears a funny. He's actually lives in a turban on the back of someone's head. Professor, what's his name? Professor Quirrell.
Quirrell.
Yeah.
But now we've spoiled Philosopher's Stone. Are we allowed to spoil all these 20-year-old movies? But this is my problem: is the movie doesn't seem to acknowledge that it's all his fault, because by the end he's still got his job. He's
because they stopped
raising a glass to Bond, and everyone's like, we love working for you, M. What crazy concoction are you going to come up with next? I'm sorry, he should be in prison. He committed a war crime. Not only that, he caused an international event trying to mop up his own problem when he had to fire on an island, and he was trying to balance between the Russians and the Japanese and the Americans. And then, did he ever tell anyone what they were actually doing? No. Yet he's risking all-out war to stop his own problem, and he's still in a position of power.
Okay, Dave, you forgot what else he fucked up.
He's also told the PM, so the PM... So someone...
Dave, have you met the British
is getting
PM?
this call from so I invented this
Dave,
thing that
Boris
will wipe
Johnson
out...
can't get a HGV driver to transport some petrol around the country. Do you think he would do this? Anyway, and Boris Johnson gives jobs to all his mates, and presumably they'd be mates, right, in this world. So, I wanted to talk about two things. Oh, it's echoey here. Firstly, another thing that Voldemort did wrong, which was when he had Christoph Waltz in that weird prison. He somehow let Christoph Waltz be communicating across the world through a magic eye.
Yeah, the magic eye.
Like, how did Christoph Waltz have that access in this high security prison where only one person's allowed to visit him?
And also, Voldemort should have seen this coming because Brian Mad Eye Moody has the same technology, right?
Right, that's all on Voldemort. And then I wanted to know, and I may be wrong here because, as I said, my memory is extremely poor for these movies. I feel like Q really got a build up. I don't remember Q ever being on location before.
He doesn't get to go in the field. Mostly because Desmond Llewellyn played him for 40 years and he was 90 years old talking to Pierce Brosnan, and he just showed up every 5 years for one scene.
But have you noticed,
as if they're going to have fucking Desmond Llewellyn and a plane.
This is jumping Q became such a big character. First of all, we learned that he's gay.
I liked that little,
I really liked that.
Little insight.
He's got an unbelievable apartment, so he's clearly earning a lot of money. He can drive submarines. He can do all comms. He's a master of radio comms. Yeah. He can invent anything. He did everything on that mission. He was flying, driving, commsing. Inventing all the things and controlling all the missile launches.
So where normally you would have a whole room full of people, they just have a queue. Do everything.
It's like the way it works. They're like, oh, you know that young geeky guy with glasses? He can fix that. That's what Q is.
The multitasking is very impressive.
Yeah. So anyway, I just think it's worth noticing that Q is now a major character.
Yeah.
In this
I really like Ben Whishaw.
Then I just kept closing my eyes and hearing Paddington.
Yeah.
And I just found that weird.
But no, he's good in it. It's solid. There was a lot of good banter. The sort of emotional.
And I loved when I really liked, again, humanising Bond. And of course we forgot to talk about Miss Moneypenny, who came in a couple of movies ago, who I like. Yeah. And I kind of like the idea of her, Q, and Bond going behind Voldemort's back. And then I love the scene when Voldemort was saying to Q, oh, something about Bond, and Q's like,
oh, Bond,
I haven't seen him. And then Bond he goes, I know Bond's staying in your house. And I really that was funny. It's moments of levity in this film that I really enjoyed. Okay, now we have to get to Rami Malek.
Let's talk about Rami Malek, and then let's talk about
the ending.
Bond's death. So Rami Malek, there's an amazing the cold open flashback.
Oh my god, I forgot about that!
Which is incredibly chilling and beautiful. Was that the start of the movie? It's the start of the movie.
It was so long ago, the movie, it was 500 years ago that I can't remember.
Norway in this amazing location. I think it was Norway in this amazing location on this frozen lake.
Yeah.
This girl, a father who's part of Spectre, and we learn is an assassin.
Did we know him from the previous movies?
Who's a drunk. They pack a lot in here.
Yeah.
I think we probably do. That's probably her Spectre plot that we don't remember. So we learned that, really incredible. I thought, right, this is the opening of the movie, and before the movie starts, the age rating showed up, and it was 12A, and it said children under 12 must be accompanied by an adult. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I'm bringing my 10-year, 11-year-old to this fucking horror show.
Yeah.
It
was terrifying. That was actually the scariest part. If I was a kid, home invasion where your mother's killed on the sofa. Are you kidding me? That's terrifying.
Brutally murdered.
The rest of it's kind of fantastical, but that's very much close to home.
Oh, literally. I thought it was really intense
and his
and
mask,
scary.
Just the whole way he was in that scene was really scary, and then the fact that he chased her across the ice.
Absolute horror show.
Yeah.
But then he disappears for 3/4 of the movie, and then shows up again. And then
you know the way I like how they did it. Right, it's she's under the ice and he lets her escape, and then next scene the beautiful Bond girl emerges from the water. So I really like how they juxtapose that. But then James goes, where were you earlier? And it's I was swimming. How would he have known that she was having this wild recollection?
You were somewhere else.
Yeah, I was underwater, and
You're
then I emerged.
You're normally very focused on your swimming. So Rami Malek, I thought was really good in this.
I did enjoy his
really
performance.
nails the.
He's such an archetype of a Bond villain.
Yeah, he just felt like a classic Bond villain.
It's like
I guess
accent
is Dr.
check.
No? Is he supposed to be Dr. No? I don't know.
I have no idea. He's
Someone who's versed in Bond can tell us in the comments.
He's someone with an accent who lives in a lair, and that's all we need to know about him. Come to my beautiful enchanted
But I
garden.
love it. I've got the poison garden. I've got everything. And but I found I thought he was very menacing. I found every time he was holding that little girl, I wanted to crawl out of my skin.
That was really upsetting for me, the little girl and him.
So for me, by introducing that little girl and then making her Bond's daughter, the stakes were so elevated. I'm far more interested in those stakes than I have ever been for any other Bond movie, because if you take her out of that, then it's Rami Malek walking around a poison garden talking to Bond saying, the whole world is going to end, Bond, what are you going to do about it? But I'm like, the world is not ever under threat, but that girl,
and she's so sweet.
I just didn't want her, that little child, that actress was lovely. I didn't want her to experience anything untoward or scary.
I was sad for her when she just dropped her teddy.
She
doesn't even need that. Also, can we just totally divert for a second?
How about the bit when he just lets her go? He's just like, fine, if you don't want to be here, you go find your teddy.
But can we just revert a bit to the bit where, go back a bit to where, you know, when like James Bond and his girlfriend realised they had their like one beautiful morning as a family where they all had breakfast together, and I love that. And then
just enough to make us care.
Yeah,
it was really
like
good.
He made her brunch and stuff.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh my god, the baddies are coming, we have to go, right? And they get in the car.
Good moment with the phone
it
where
was
she's
really
like,
good.
007's about to catch them, and it's like, wait, why is she coming to me?
It was really good. But then they're in the car for like what seemed like a decent enough period of time, and then everything that happens in that like amazing sequence.
The forest and the mist.
Sorry.
Amazing done.
As someone who has a 4-year-old, all that she would be doing in the back of the car is, are we there yet? What's happening? Can I have a snack? Mommy. So that child's behaviour was outrageously false, okay? So they didn't write the 4-year-old properly. Anyway, aside from that, in this scene, it's still the only bit of the movie I got bored in, though at one point Rami Malek was just like droning on. It's like, alright Rami, we get it.
You mean on the island?
When just, you know, his whole Mr. Bond, and then I don't know what happened, and I don't know why it happened, but Rami Malek or James Bond, someone threw a pillow up in the air and then the other one shot it. I had no idea what that was.
He shot it, yeah.
But why?
To show what he can do to pillows. If you cross me, these pillows are going to get it.
And then I was like, Bond's going to use the watch. He's going to use the watch, because they do tee up those gadgets, but he didn't. Anyway, it was
he did use the watch. He
but not in that sequence.
No,
he did it at the end. He did it on his brain, and he did it like a joke.
The eyeball. That was good.
And I just love that whole sequence of like that feeling of like when Bond, like, it's so sad when he realises that he's been infected with his girlfriend's DNA.
Great little idea.
That was so sad.
Yeah, sad. Like, this idea that you could never be close to the people you love ever again, and he's just discovered this family that he...
And they had their one beautiful brunch that was rudely interrupted.
It was really sad.
Yeah, that really got me. And like, brilliant move by Rami Malek, like ultimate villain move, right? Make sure he can never go near the woman that you for some reason love.
Yeah.
And I also love to see when Rami Malek...
Sorry, before we move on, how about when they tried to do the same thing in Spectre, which I've just remembered, where Christoph Waltz has him over a table and then he says, I have removed... I'm going to butcher it, I don't remember. I have removed the section of your brain which allows you to feel love or to recognise those you love or something. And then he does it, and then Bond just carries on. So something happened in Spectre. Somebody remind us where something mad like that happened.
But it didn't matter then, because all he had was Vespa. Again, it was never that interesting if his main love interest had been dead for 10 years. Like, there was not much stakes. It's a little bit like in Rocky 5 when they're like, you could never fight again or you'll die. And then in Rocky 6 he's just fighting and is like the champion again.
So
and there was nothing between those two.
What were you going to say? There was another Rami Malek scene you were going to say?
When he like visits the psychologist in her office, and he's like,
chilling
and
as
he's
well.
like, I like your flowers. My father had lots of flowers. And you're just like,
yeah, he was creepy.
And it's like, I wonder why she's the only woman Christoph Waltz wants to see. Like, in fairness to them, I thought they had to cast a woman that we believed. Christoph Waltz, Rami Malek and Daniel Craig loved, right? Mm-hmm. I thought she's a really charismatic, enigmatic, very clearly beautiful woman. I appreciated all that. I thought if you're going to tie all these men together with the love interest, I think she was worthy and believable in that character. Anyway, that's an aside. I thought she was great with the daughter. Like, I really felt their connection. So when James Bond realises he's absolutely knackered, I love that sequence when he gets up all the steps and Q's like, you're going to have to do all these really intricate things to get the doors open. And Bond just like, because he's an old dinosaur.
Amazing action scene, by the way.
He just goes in,
follow him up those steps.
But when he gets in and just starts knocking all the levers and just gets it up, that was very funny. And then he finally gets all the way back down. Then Rami Malek can fix him. Then he realises it's all too late, and then he just goes up again. And then when he just that beautiful sequence where he stands on the rock, and we were bawling, crying, like, and he's just looking up and he's speaking to her in the earpiece, and she says, all she says is, she has your eyes, and he says, I know, and
lovely.
I was just bawling, crying. And that's when I was just, I've never ever been emotionally.
She really did. Did they do something to that child's eyes? Is she wearing lenses, or did they just cast her perfectly right? But he's got quite striking blue eyes, and she had the same exact.
I think
one.
we should do a hashtag no blue-eyed Bond. He has to be brown-eyed and brown-haired, but white-skinned and in his 50s.
Well, yeah,
very specific character he needs to be.
Quite a bold move. I thought it was really bold for a Bond movie. I thought really interesting.
I've never been emotionally affected before.
Yeah, very emotionally affecting. So,
but I think his last word should have been Vespa.
I'm off to see my beloved Vespa now.
I just thought, and when she realises over the phone that like he's been, or over the earpiece, that he's been infected, and then I loved that in that moment the other 007 was like protecting his family. I just loved all that, what that represented. And then, it was wonderful. And then I kind of wish they just...
I didn't like when she gave him his code name back for no reason.
It was an act of respect.
Go on.
And then I love, obviously, the sequence in, like, referencing that old Bond movie when the mom is in the car with the daughter, even though, again, driving very dangerously. And inappropriately.
Sorry, I forgot about that. Yeah, and she said, let me tell you a story about James Bond. And that actually felt like... something interesting thematically as well, to have this. It kind of tied in with the whole thing about Bond as a franchise, James Bond being told now by women through to another woman.
That's really
right? She's like, let me tell you about this man called James Bond. And it was a mother telling a daughter.
She's like, remember the worst day of your life? Remember the guy that was there that day? That's actually your dad? But he did make you brunch that morning, and you were a good little girl in the car when we were shooting at everyone. You stayed real quiet.
Well done. All right, well, we leave it there. That was quite... I enjoyed talking about that. I enjoyed that movie. I enjoyed talking about it.
And now we're going to have to wait another 5 years for the next one. After this, I'm actually really interested enough to see, like, just from, like, an editorial kind of commercial perspective, where they take it, who they cast next. Like, I find that very interesting. I can see what all the hype is about, like, in terms of who they cast next, because like it's a huge franchise, and everyone's like, is it going to be Tom Holland as young Bond? I wonder if they might surprise us though, because Daniel Craig was a surprise casting.
Yeah.
I hope it's no one that anyone.
Really though. It's like he wasn't much of a. I know you said there was like everyone was outraged.
Surprised,
he
was never a contender though.
Yeah, okay.
No one was talking about him before he was announced.
They'll do something, hopefully not.
Remember there's obvious. Like two people that had loads of hype in the last couple of years.
Idris Elba.
Idris Elba, but I think flat out he's too old.
Michael Fassbender.
No, the two biggest hypes were the guy from Bridgerton last year.
Oh yeah,
Everyone's obsessed about him being Bond.
Yeah, he looks.
And then the
part.
other one was what's his name? Loki. Tom Hiddleston.
Oh yeah, I feel like he's a bit too past it now.
I just feel like they'll go.
Also,
younger.
sorry, that would be boring because he kind of did that in those the John Carnier adaptations on TV, The Night Manager. I feel like he's done that.
You're right. That's when everyone was saying he should be Bond.
Yeah, but I feel like that's not interesting.
Yeah, you're right.
I like him, but
anyway. I would love if it was the guy from Bridgerton, and in every scene he's just like, I burn for you, Vespa.
Vespa.
Right.
God, I wish though they would delve into Vespa a bit more. Like have a Vespa spin-off series.
Well, Amazon have done some deal with them now for like $800 million. To have some sort of access to the Bond name.
Okay.
So maybe there'll be a young Vespa
maybe
series.
we'll finally get James Bond Jr. back on the screen. Do you remember that?
No, I think we should get
James Bond Jr.
Vespa Jr. That's what I need to see.
Oh, that's what we need.
Except she died when she was already like 18, so...
Amazon needs to take a leaf out of Disney's book and just rinse this thing. 6 spin-off shows a year. 4 movies a year. Come on, guys.
Kind of work
That's how commercialism works.
With Marvel, you've got a cinematic universe. This is just James Bond.
Yeah. You have Q. You've got Q Jr. You've got the Q Files. You've got... you just do it.
I'd actually love if it was
the Moneypenny Diaries.
Do you know what they should do? They should do a first date but starring Q, because he can set up a good date.
He was an absolute killer.
If I went on a stayed and it was in that apartment concierge. With that food and like guy that good looking.
Yeah.
He's on to a winner. Anyway.
Lovely decor. Him and Rami Malek, both like lovely, like Japanese infused sort of interior design styles. Shame about the poison.
I loved the bit in Rami Malek's lair when there was just like hundreds of people like fully dressed in plastic because they were just wandering around tending a poison lake.
Yeah, obviously. All right, come on, let's wrap this up.
We have to go.
Thanks for bearing with us, but we did enjoy that, and we hope you enjoyed the movie too. If you want to chat with us about it, at The Cinemile on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or email us thecinemile@gmail.com.
And if you haven't already done so, would you please head over to Apple Podcasts and subscribe and leave us a review. We greatly appreciate it. It's how other people can find the podcast and how we also love hearing from you guys there. So
or join the awesome community over at the Cinemile High Club, patreon.com/The Cinemile.
Yeah,
we have lots of fun.
So much fun doing movie, TV reviews. As I mentioned already, we're going to do weekly Succession reviews, and we watch retro movies every month as picked by our patrons.
Yeah, High Fidelity's next. But reach out to us. We love to chat.
Bye.
So, bye.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What do you do when no one else is watching? What do you do that makes you happy for no reason at all? What are you obsessed with? I'm Leslie Arfin, and I'm a writer, but I'm also a dancer, a painter, a vapor, a dollhouse enthusiast, and basically just an overall hobbyist. My podcast, Filling the Void, is all about what other people are fanatically into. We talk about hobbies, even if you don't have one.
Listen to Filling the Void on Tuesdays on the Arios Network and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.